I'm going to do a couple of things different than I did in our first service. Let me get this here. Are we good? Okay. All right, I was going to say, hello? Hello? Check. The first thing I'm going to do this morning is break your microphone. And mission accomplished, maybe? Check. Good. Michael, maybe it was that huge drop that did it. But we'll start with this morning. The first question that I want to start off with this morning asking you, we're going to have kind of a prequel this morning because we're going to be talking tonight at the Back to School Bash about one word, and that word is pride, and it's going to come from 1 Samuel 25. And so since we had a combined class this morning, I wanted to give you a prequel to this and say some things this morning that would match up with tonight's and maybe give you some incentive to come back for the Back to School Bash. But as we jump in this morning to 1 Samuel 25, and there's only going to be one slide up here this morning that says this right here, a peacemaker, what it means to be a peacemaker. I want to start by opening the floor for you. I'm extra comfortable doing this, so I want to start by asking you this morning, what does it mean for you to see this word here, peacemaker? What do you think of when you think of someone who is a peacemaker? A negotiator, all right? Let's talk about that for a minute. Somebody who says here, we've got some opposition. We have somebody who is in this spot and believes this way. We've got somebody over here who feels this way, and a negotiator can step in and say, hey, we're going to try to bring these sides together. Our ultimate goal here in this is the end result of peace. And so a negotiation, being able to talk it through. As a parent, I say this a lot. Use your words, all right? You can say that to adults too. Use your words and use the nice ones, all right, to talk to each other and to negotiate. Thank you. Other things you think of when you hear peacemaker? Yes. Blessed? Okay. We should put this in a good book, and we should say, blessed are the peacemakers. All right? Somebody who does this, if you think about this, when we talk about blessed are the peacemakers, it's also this, happy are those who make peace. I'm going to come over to the youth in a minute, so get ready. But somebody else, when you hear peacemaker, I hear right now a blessed negotiator. Yes? What'd you say? Okay. I cannot think about the word peacemaker and think about somebody who would be described as a riot, as somebody who came in to stir the waters. You all have friends and family like that who, when they get together, they like to push all the buttons. You know what I mean? They're going to bring up the subject. They're going to do the things that get people triggered, if you will, and that get them upset. When I hear a peacemaker, I think of the word calm. Somebody who is going to negotiate, somebody who is going to do that in a blessed fashion. I'm using all your answers this morning, but is also going to say this, I'm going to do this in a manner that is calm because I want people to be peaceful. All right, youth group, I'm coming over here. I'm going to cut right through. What do you think of when you think about the word peacemaker? A peacemaker. And I'll hang out here all morning. I did youth ministry for a long time, and Sunday morning is the worst time to ask an open-ended question, so I can hang out. I mean, I'm good. A peacemaker, what do you think of? A leader. That's great. Don't you want your leaders to be described as peacemakers? I appreciate that answer. All right, because I want somebody to lead the church that I attend, and I want to say, you know what, that person, that shepherd, as a leader, that they're a peacemaker. I want to think about somebody who loves the country and who loves people, and their ultimate goal is not just to fight and not just to start a war, but to say, you know what, the end result as a leader is to be a peacemaker. And now I want to ask a question to you that you don't have to answer audibly. Do you feel like people in your daily walk, in your orbit around you, could describe you as a peacemaker? Taft, you understand. You understand where I work? There are some crazy people at my work. And Taft, at my work, there are people there who are about 5 seconds from getting knocked out, even though I'm a Christian. And if you don't have somebody like that at your work, you're probably the one 5 seconds from getting knocked out. There are people all the time who would say, you know what, it's just not a peaceful place. It's not a good place, so it's a challenge for me there. Would the people in your family be able to describe you as a peacemaker? Well, I don't know. I get pretty fired up. I get upset. Calm is not a word to describe me. I'm a terrible negotiator. I just like to come in and drop an A-bomb and back up and tell everybody to get right. All right? And so I might not be a peacemaker. But what I want to challenge you with this morning is the fact of this. When I think about being somebody who belongs to the Lord's church, and I talked about this a lot in our first service, when I belong to the Lord's church, I believe that when we come together, there is something special. And I got a granddaddy who told me for years, he said, son, if Christians can't be nice, I wish they would just be quiet. And he said that to me because we lived in Nashville and there were a lot of churches with a lot of opinions, and there was a lot of folks who, because of their righteous indignation, would look and they would say, well, this church is doing that wrong. This church is doing that wrong. This church is messing up over here. And it's almost as though all the people who were teaching kids at a young age to sing songs like Fighting in the Lord's Army forgot who the enemy was. And they forgot that there was a real enemy, and they turned on each other. And then they turned on each other, and when the church turns on each other and starts shooting each other, there's no such thing as, oh, friendly fire. That's how Valley View is. That's how Nettleton is. Well, he's using real names. All right, that's how Southwest is. That's how Bono is. That's how those people are over here. There's no such thing as just, oh, it's just friendly fire. When the church turns and starts shooting at each other, because we forget who the enemy is. And we forget that there is an enemy out there. There is an enemy who is roaming about, who wants to family, who wants to destroy your marriage, and who wants the church to spend all of her time talking about each other. And so, crazy thought, what would happen if right here in our walls it was full of people that were committed to saying this, you know what, I want to be a peacemaker. I want to be somebody who is a peacemaker. I want to lead people in a way where the ultimate goal is peace. Doesn't mean that I won't be convicted. It doesn't mean that I won't stand on the truth. But the flip side of this is this question right here. If we have truth, what are we so afraid of? You know, if I have truth, I'm somebody who's supposed to say there is conviction in my life and there is plenty of space for compassion. I should be both. And so what we're going to do this morning is we're going to have some fun, because I believe, and you may not believe this way, but I believe that when I read the Bible, it should be, and this is going to mess with some of you, it should be entertaining. And there are people that say this, no, I don't believe that we're here for entertainment. I don't think we should do that. Google the word or go to your dictionary and look up the word entertain, and it will say to engage the mind. And if you are coming together at the Lord's church to worship together and your mind is not engaged, then that is in vain. In vain means without meaning, and we talk all the time about not wanting to be those people. So we are going to look this morning at 1 Samuel 25, and we are going to have a good time looking at 1 Samuel 25, because if a group of Christians can't get together and smile and think about hope and think about eternity, you know what? We'll spend time in places all over our community smiling and then get together and have a frown session for an hour. And I am out on that. All right? So church, if you will, we're going to 1 Samuel 25. And I want to ask you this question when you think about being a peacemaker. I want you to ask you if you know what your name means. If you know what your name means, I won't ask you to prove it, but if you know what your name means, raise your hand. If you know the meaning of your name, raise your hands. All right, that's a fun thing. It's a fun thing to know what your name means. If your name is biblical, then you'll say, okay, here's my name and here's what they did in the Bible. If your name is Jezebel, I hope your mom didn't read the Bible. All right, that's just a random family name, right? Maybe you have a name that means princess. Maybe there's some of these boys over here that believe that their name means God's gift to women. Hey, you're wrong. All right. My oldest son, his name is Wyatt. And years ago, I had a best friend named Wyatt. I do love Tombstone and Wyatt Earp and all that action. But he was named Wyatt actually because my wife found out that it meant little warrior. And we had prayed over him, that there was a lot going on. And so when he came out, I had this Lion King moment. You know, it's like, hey, you hold up the baby, and you're like, this is the little warrior that I am commissioning unto the Lord. And then he started kicking things. And then he started punching people. And then he started wrecking stuff. And I said, honey, you named him Little Warrior. All right, that is your fault. But if you know what your name means, hopefully this morning, nobody will stop and say this: my name means fool. Hopefully nobody in here has parents whose name would mean fool. You would think, do you love me? Are you trying to curse my life? But remember that for a minute, that there is a man that we're going to read about in 1 Samuel 25 whose name by definition is fool. And here we're going to see this in 1 Samuel chapter 25. It says in verse 1 that now Samuel died, and all of Israel assembled and mourned for him, and they buried him. Then David moved down into the desert, and a certain man was there. And this man, for definition this morning, this man was a wealthy man. This man was a man who could walk in and make it rain. This is a man who could walk in, and he had all kinds of things to point to his wealth, to point to who he was. And it says here in the beginning of chapter 25, to prove how wealthy he was, this certain man here was very wealthy, and to show his wealth, it was equated here, he had 1,000 goats and 3,000 sheep, which he was shearing in Carmel at the time. Now, I used to grow up, full confession, watching the show Lifestyles of the Rich and Famous. And I used to watch that from my condominium. And I would watch that from my condominium, and I would watch Lifestyles of the Rich and Famous, and I thought it was the greatest show ever. These people have all of these cars, and they have refrigerators that are full, and they have people that work at their house. And I would tell my mama all the time, I would say, Mom, I love this. Man, well, one day we're going to have this. And my mama got smart. And she got smart, and she said, Taft, one day if we have a house like that, think about how many trash cans are going to be in a house that big that you'll have to take out. And I went, oh, good play, Mom. Nice mom switch. And then we were driving down a road one day, and I remembered Lifestyles of the Rich and Famous, and I said, Mom, you're wrong. And she said, why is that? And I said, if we could afford a house like that, we could afford people to take out the trash. All right, for sure. But I used to watch these shows, and I would see the way that people could show off their wealth. And one of the ways that they would show off their wealth is they would push a button, and then all of a sudden, the garage would open. And there would be car upon car upon car that they did not drive. And it made no sense to me because they were polished and they were fancy and they were nice. But I would see that and I would think, you know what? The number one word not coming through my mind right now is poverty. All right? I'm thinking about wealth. I'm thinking about opulence. And this is a way to show it off. And that's what we see in 1 Samuel 25. In order to show how wealthy he was, they mention how many goats he had, how many sheep he had, and it showed off his wealth. And we actually have this encounter here at sheep shearing time. And it says that his name was Nabal and his wife's name was Abigail. Now, I love the descriptions here because in our story this morning, Abigail is, here, I'm going to give it away, the peacemaker. And she is the peacemaker, the one who saves everyone in this story from bloodshed and destruction. But when we're describing Abigail here, it says, and I love the description, she was intelligent and beautiful. Young men who are here, that's called the unicorn. All right, she is intelligent and beautiful. She is the total package of both of these things together. And I know if you're like me, you have seen people before, and don't look around and point this morning, but you have seen people before and said, how did he do that? Why is she, and we'll be fair this morning, we're equal opportunity offenders. Why did she get with him? How did that happen? Did he used to be nice? Did he used to be good looking? And maybe say this, well, he's always been rich. All right? But you look and you see people and you think, how did those two people connect? There's this description of Abigail, and it says here that she was beautiful and intelligent. But her husband, a Calebite, the description here says this, that he was surly and mean in all of his dealings. So we've got this picture painted. A woman who's beautiful and intelligent, and her husband, this man with her, who is bitter and nasty. And you can picture that couple right now. You can picture that couple right now where if you have to talk to them, somebody will tell you this, hey, talk to her, not him. He's frowning all the time. He looks miserable to be here. I don't know what's wrong with that guy, but she is so nice. She is so beautiful. Man, talk to her, not him. And in this moment, we have this picture painted of both of them, and it says he was mean in his dealings. But we pick up in verse 4. While David was in the desert, he heard that Nabal was shearing sheep. And this is a time of festivity. This is a time of great hospitality. This is a time where somebody who is rich is getting richer. This is a time where somebody is doing this, and David hears that it's this time, and it says in verse 5 that he sent 10 young men, and he said to them, go up to Nabal at Carmel and greet him in my name. Say to him, and listen to this greeting, say to him, long life to you, good health to you and your household. If I had greeted Michael this morning, or if I grab Spencer after this, and I come up and I say, long life to you, good health to you and your household, they might say, hey, bud, what's wrong with Taft? And I can tell you this, at my house, if any of the four come up to me and they say, Dad, good morning, long life to you, the response is going to be, what did you do? And or, you ready? What do you want? And so with this greeting here that David sends out, it's long life to you. I wish you nothing but the best. Sounds like I'm quoting an Adele song. But I wish you nothing but the best. Long life to you and all of yours. Oh yeah, and reminder. And the reminder here is this. The whole time that your shepherds were with us, we did not mistreat them. I hear that it's sheep shearing time, and we want to remind you of this. Nothing was missing. We took care of your men. We took care of your people. Ask your own servants, and they will tell you. Therefore, be favorable, the message from David, be favorable toward my young men, since we come at a festive time. So what David is laying down here is this. Hey, this is a time when there's festivity. This is a time when sheep shearing is going on. And it's also a time of great hospitality. And the answer is this. The question is this. Can we have some? You know how it goes. The time that you get out food, the time that you get something out and heads just start popping up. Maybe you can open a certain bag in your house and people that you hadn't seen in 2 hours start showing up. My wife has this joke. If she wants to get our kids' attention in the car, it looks like a little hockey puck, but it has all like the breath mints in it. If she opens that and it cracks, all these hands start coming out because I guess all the kids care about their hygiene. Right? But everybody wants a little bit of it at that time. David says, it's time that you are dividing. It's time that you are feeling hospitable, Nabal. And here's what I want you to know. We took care of you. Could we get a little bit? Could we get something since you're during this right now at this time? Could you give us a little bit right now? And he says this. His words are this. We come at a festive time. Please give your servants and your son David, look at this next part, whatever you can find for them. It's not a huge ask. It's saying, hey, if you have some to spare, could we have some? Could you help us out? Could you scratch our back since we scratched yours, since we protected yours and watched your back? But look at this response. The response here to him is this. After he asked this, and they asked this question, please give them what you can. When David's men arrived, they gave Nabal this message in David's name, and then they waited. And maybe before, if we talk about being a peacemaker this morning, maybe before, you've been the messenger. You've been the negotiator. You've been the one that went to ask somebody and then you had to wait and you got this feeling of, this ain't going to go well. This guy is mean and surly in all of his dealings, but they sent me with the cape, the superhero cape that said, you ask him. Like, I was the one that had to approach. I was the one that had to make this ask. And as they waited, the response this morning is nothing short of terrible. The response is terrible because the response back from Nabal is this. Nabal answered David's servants, who is this David? Who is this son of Jesse? It would be terrible for me this morning to come here thinking that I knew one of you. Thinking that I knew one of you and that I remembered you from something in 2010, all right? And I came back, I got my coffee, and I walked up to you, and I said, hey, man, how's it going? It's great to see you. It's been a long time since we've seen each other. And you looked and you said, hey, sorry, what's your name? Or who are you? You've been there before. You've done that wave to somebody. Hey, Chris. And they did the, I don't know who you are. All right? Or somebody said, hey, tell them that Taft said hi. And the most embarrassing response ever is, hey, tell them Taft said hi. And they went, who? And then that happens to me a lot with my name. Like, oh, the big-headed guy from Nashville. Got it. All right? But a lot of times there's this ultimate disrespect right here. And Nabal's response is this. Who is this David? Who's this David coming to me right now, asking for this? Doesn't he know that right now there are many people, many servants are breaking away from their masters these days? Why should I take my bread and water and the meat that I have slaughtered for my shearers and give it to men coming from who knows where? Now, I don't know if you grew up or if you have somebody in your family who loves watching Westerns. But Westerns for me are movies when I watch them, I'm always bored for a long time. I'm bored with the dialogue. I'm bored with what's taking place. I really don't care what happened with this cattle hand and this guy here. But when it comes to shooting time, man, I hope you had your bathroom break. Like, when it comes to shooting time in a Western, let's go. Like, this is the part that I love. And I got a brother who, when we watch a movie, he can be the most checked out person. But when action comes, I've always told him he sounds like a really excited chipmunk because he's a grown man, but he gets on the edge of his seat and he's like, like he's getting really into the movie. And if this is on the big screen right here, this moment in 1 Samuel 25 is a moment that we all dial in because it turns into a Western. It says right here that after this message is done and after he responds, verse 12, David's men turned around and went back. When they arrived, just the messenger, they reported every word to David. And when they reported every word to David, in verse 13, David says to them, in the text, he says, put on your swords. And I know I made this sound effect once in our first worship this morning. Sorry, I'm fixing to do it again. But the sound effect right here is this. All right, the sound effect here that goes perfectly with this, and if you don't like this, you don't like the Bible, because what it says right here is put on your swords, like strap up. It's go time. David is offended. David is mad. All right, David in his anger is fired up, and he says to his men, he says to a posse, if you will, the words right here. He says, strap up. He says to them, put on your sword. And they put on their swords, and David put on his. It says about 400 men went up with David, while 200 stayed with the supplies. David's rolling with 600 right here while he is on the run, having a lot going on in his life. And it says that the 200 stayed with the supplies. One of the servants told Nabal's wife, Abigail, remember this, I called her a unicorn, boys, all right, because she is beautiful and intelligent. One of them goes and tells her exactly what has happened, kind of this moment. And this is when the peacemaker goes into full peacemaking mode. Hey, there's about to be a fight. All right, maybe at Thanksgiving for you, it's, hey, Uncle such and such said this to Aunt so-and-so, and you know what's about to go down. All right? Or maybe you've seen it in a church. You got the person who comes here every time to church to critique what's going on, worshiping the Lord. All right? And they come in with an opinion and something to say, and then you see them in the foyer in the back, and they've got the elder's ear, and you see that the neck's popping. All right? And they're talking real back and forth a lot. Has nothing to do with Valley View. I preach at churches everywhere. But somebody's got an opinion, and it's a strong opinion. And you go, well, somebody needs to save him. All right, so somebody needs to pull him out of that because they're getting scrappy back there. Here, they go to Abigail. They tell her exactly what's going on. And they say this, David sent messengers from the desert to give our master his greetings, but he hurled insults at them. Yet these men were very good to us. They did not mistreat us. And the whole time that we were out in the fields near them, nothing was missing. first thing I want you to know this morning is that if you are somebody who is a peacemaker, buckle up, because people are going to come to you thinking that you will A, care, and B, that you will invest and do something about it. And so Abigail is approached here because she is beautiful and because she is intelligent and because she is in a position to do something about it. And that's what I want you to know this morning. You are here gathered together, the Lord's church with the Lord's people. You receive promises of hope every week. You're going to sing songs and messages about heaven. You're going to sing songs and messages about deliverance, about being forgiven. And you, this morning, church, are in a position to be a peacemaker. It is not your job as a Christian to look at everybody and inventory their heart and to say, I know what you really meant and I know what you're really thinking, because I don't want somebody to do that to me. What position I am in is in a position right here to look, to evaluate, and to say this, you know what? I'm in a position as a member of the Lord's church, as somebody who belongs to the church of Christ, where people can look at me and they can say to me, you know what? This is somebody who has the ability to bring peace. And it says that as this happens, they describe this to her. And look at verse 17. Now think it over and see what you can do. This is, as my brother said this morning, this is a negotiation. All right, think it over. So see what you can do. Balance the scales here and see what happens. Because disaster is hanging over our master and his whole household. And we're going to talk about that tonight at our back to school bash. That's what pride is. You think that you're the man. You think that you've got everything right. But disaster is hanging over you, and pride does not let you see it. He is such a wicked man that no one can talk to him. The next thing that a peacemaker does is a peacemaker does this in verse 19. Abigail lost no time. Abigail hurriedly went and did this. Abigail did not say here, you know what? I really want peace, but I'm going to strive for it tomorrow. Abigail said this, peace is something that can come from my hands. Peace is something that can come from my heart. But now is the time for me to do something about it. And maybe you're in that spot this morning. Maybe you're in the spot this morning, because today what we're going to do is we're going to pray for two types of people. This morning when we conclude class, we're going to pray for the person in here who is striving to be the peacemaker. And I'm going to offer a prayer for this church, for the people that are trying to reach out to somebody and you feel like you've hit that wall. And you feel like you can't do it anymore. And I want to encourage you to continue to be an Abigail, to continue to be somebody right here, as we see in verse 18, where it says this, she lost no time. And I don't know how many of you have been told before that the way to a man's heart is through his what? Stomach, right? Through his belly. Look what she does. She says she wastes no time. She took 200 loaves of bread, 2 skins of wine, 5 dressed sheep. She goes in, she gets roasted grain, 100 cakes of raisins, 200 cakes of pressed figs, loaded them on a donkey. She gets, if we said he got strapped up with the guns and with the swords, she gets strapped up here with the goods. And she sends them on ahead of her and says, go on ahead and I will follow you. But she did not tell her husband Nabal. As she came riding her donkey into a mountain ravine, there were David and his men descending toward her, and she met him. Now I refer to this being a Western because of what David had just said. David had just said to his men, it's been useless, all my watching here at this time, watching over this fellow's property in the desert so that nothing of his was missing. And maybe you feel this way this morning, because the words that David says right here are this. He says, he has paid me back evil for good. Is there a relationship in your life this morning where you feel like that's the perfect descriptor of the equation? I have been a good person, Taft. I have done the right things that I am supposed to. And I have tried to treat them with all the fruits of the Spirit. I've tried to be a Christian. I have tried. I wanted to do this, but they have paid me back evil for good. And when that happens, we feel righteous. When that happens, we feel like, oh, you don't understand. This is what they've done to me. This is how the balances have shifted here. And this is why I am the way that I am. They have paid me back evil for good. And David here in this moment says, this is what he has done. He's paid me back evil for good. And then this is where it gets crazy right here, where he says, may God deal with David ever so severely if by morning I leave alive one male of all who belong to him. What he says is this: God is my witness. Man, if I don't wipe out all of Nabal's people, if I don't go in there and do this because I'm mad, because I'm fired up, if I don't do that, may God deal with me ever so severely because I have righteous anger. I read this right here, just for me, zoomed out in 2019, and man, David looks silly. Man, as Taft reading this, that looks dumb. But if I go home and my wife sets a video camera up of the moments that I get upset, if my kids, as they tell stories at Columbia Academy this week, and they're writing, oh, this is what my daddy does when he gets upset, and they put it down on paper. While I don't think I'm a monster, I guarantee you I'm going to look pretty stupid when I get upset. Because I'm righteously mad, and you do things, and because you're vindicated and you're doing it, in that moment you think you're good. In that moment you think that you're settling a score. But if you could just zoom out and watch yourself, you would say, oh, you look so silly right now. And what the peacemaker does, the peacemaker steps in, wastes no time, and steps in and says, this is not what you want to do. Let me save you from yourself. Let me save you from you right now because you are your own worst enemy. And that's what Abigail steps in here and does. Because as he says this, and as he says, may God deal with me ever so severely, it says, Abigail saw David, verse 23, and she quickly got off her donkey and bowed before David with her face to the ground. She fell at his feet and said, my Lord, let the blame be on me alone. Please let your servant speak to you. Hear what your servant has to say. The peacemaker doesn't go to somebody in conflict and say this, what's the matter with you? The peacemaker doesn't go into the fire with a can of gasoline and say, we're about to put this thing out. The peacemaker goes in here and says, my Lord. The peacemaker goes in here and takes a position of humility that says this, I know that you are upset right now. Let me absorb, not some of the abuse, but let me absorb some of the tension. Let me take some of this on you because I'm seeing this on a bigger scale and a bigger picture than you are. Let me talk to the youth again. They nag you. They wear you out. It's almost as though they birthed you and you are able to live here, but their whole responsibility and their whole mission in life, it feels like it's to destroy all your fun and to take away all of your freedom. And I promise you, they don't sit around going, how can I ruin their lives today? I promise you, no matter who your parents or guardians are, they're not thinking, I'm going to give them the most miserable day ever. What they are trying to do when they do it from a godly position is what they are trying to do is say this, man, I have made my mistakes. I just don't want you to make the same ones. Man, I have dropped the ball, and I see it's getting heavy for you. In the church, you prayed about it, and you decided to appoint them as elders. You decided to appoint them as elders, as people who were shepherds of the flock. And they don't have meetings, I promise you, on Wednesday nights where they get together and say, how can we say no to 100 things this week for our flock? How can we come in here and ruin all the fun? How can we come in here and make them really scared when they see our number on the caller ID? I had a lady at a church that we both served at, and one time she came to me and she said, Taft, I need to talk to you. And I said, sure, Beth, what's the matter? And she goes, I saw on my caller ID one of the elders' names. And I said, okay. And she goes, have you heard anything? Have you heard anything? What do you mean? I said, this is one of your shepherds calling you. You should say, oh, I can't wait to call him back. But her thought right here was, I don't know. Like, did my kid do something? Did I put something on Facebook I shouldn't have put on? It was this fear about it. When what they're supposed to be is this moment of, you're trying to do what's best for me. And when I look at somebody who sometimes I feel like is nagging me, driving me crazy, or saying all these things to me, I've got to stop and say this. What are they trying to accomplish? Do they really care about me? And are they trying to bring peace into my life? And if so, why am I fighting against it? Because I got mad one time? Because I got offended back a few years ago? And here's what happens with Abigail. As she goes and she bends and she says, let the blame be on me alone. Please let your servant speak to you. May my Lord pay no attention to that wicked man Nabal. He is just like his name. His name means fool. Years ago, I told a church I was serving in Memphis that the Bible says to call no man a fool. All right, so don't call people a fool. And one of the kids in my youth group said, that's fine. He's such a Nabal. And so they went like biblical on it. We'll just call him a Nabal because the name means fool. No, don't pull that trick either at home. But it says, and folly goes with him. But as for me, your servant, I did not see the man that my master sent. And look at verse 26. This is the last thing I'm going to leave you with this morning. A peacemaker talks like this. Now, since the Lord has kept you, my master, from bloodshed and from avenging yourself with your own hands, as surely as the Lord lives and as you live, may your enemies and all who intend to harm my master be like Nabal. And let this gift which your servant has brought to my master be given to the men who follow you. Please forgive your servant's offense, for the Lord, and this is what I love, for the Lord will certainly make a lasting dynasty for my master because he fights the Lord's battles. Abigail says this. A peacemaker talks like this. I know that you're upset. I know that you're offended. But if you will be still for a second and let God be God and fight God's battles, not Taft's battles. If you will fight the battles for God, and if you will be somebody who says, I know it belongs to the Lord, and if you will not only say that, but if you will live like that, then not only will you keep yourself from bloodshed, but she says this, you will create a dynasty for your family. You know what that means? That means that I have an opportunity this morning to be a peacemaker and to tell somebody, hey, I'm not just looking out for your moment right now, because I know you're ticked. I know you're mad. I know you've been abused. I know somebody has done you wrong, but I'm trying, as somebody who loves you, to look out for your tomorrow. I'm trying to look out for next year if God gives us that. And I'm trying to look out for the people that are coming in the here and now who are going to be a part of this family name, and are going to be a part of our legacy and a part of our dynasty that say this, you know what? Not, oh, granddaddy was just mad and he just got fired up and just told people what he thought. But you know what? He was somebody who loved the Lord. And he was somebody who loved the Lord and who talked to people all the time. And he was able to tell them the difference between right and wrong. But he did every bit of it through love and compassion so that they would pay attention and receive his conviction. That's what a peacemaker does. And that's why I think that the Lord's church should be like Abigail. That we should be like Abigail, who waste no time and who say that we want to promote peace in every aspect of our lives. Let's pray. Father God, we come to your throne this morning asking this prayer for members of this church, for visitors who are here, Father, who have just been striving for peace for a long time, but feel like we keep smacking our face plumb against that wall. Father, I ask this prayer for us because we need breakthrough. God, I ask this prayer for us because we really want them to know that we love them and that we care about them. And God, I just ask the courage for somebody this morning that if they're in this building, built by man, but worshiping you, our God, who is so bigger, so large, and so strong. Father, I ask that person, if they're having that moment this morning where they just want breakthrough and they just want somebody to know that they care about them and that they love them and that they just want peace in their lives. Father, if that person's sitting next to them, Lord, I hope that they will just have the strength and the compassion to just grab their hand and to just squeeze it and to just let them know that I love you and I've always wanted peace for you. Father, maybe it requires today picking up a phone, placing a phone call, sending a text, writing a letter, doing whatever we have to do to tell somebody, I'm so sorry if it sounded like I've got all the answers and you don't. I just want peace for you in your life. I don't want you to have a spirit of trouble, a spirit of poverty, a spirit of problems. But I just want you to know that peace is what I want for you, and peace is what Jesus can bring. Father, I pray that this will be our product. Father, that we will talk to people all the time about the peace that comes only from you, and a peace that passes all of our understanding when somebody leaves this earth and we're still behind. And Father, I pray in everything that you will give us clarity to get out of our own way and to save us from ourselves in those moments when we stand in the way of our own peace. Father, be with the person this morning who is trying to reach out, who is trying to love, trying to encourage. And Father, I pray that they will not stop because someone never stopped with them. We love you so much, and we're thankful for your Son, Jesus. It's in his name that we live, in his name that we pray. Amen.